So good afternoon and welcome to Auburn. My name is Kirk Grand. I'm an assistant coach for Auburn Swimming and Diving. I got my master's degree in exercise physiology at the Councilman Center for the Science of Swimming. And I came to Auburn to pursue my PhD in psychophysiology, graduated, and then was hired on staff here at Auburn. So today we're going to talk about taper, the science and the art of taper. It's an interesting part of the season, and I think it's a very complex topic, so we're going to try to make it a little bit more digestible for everybody. So the bottom line is your body responds to stimuli. Okay, so we'll start here. This is you at the beginning of the season. And so what happens is as you start to train, you're presented with different exercise stimuli. So you start lifting, you start swimming, and then your body adapts to that and invests in metabolic adaptations to basically adapt to those stimuli. And some of those adaptations are you increase capillary density, you increase your plasma volume, you increase mitochondrial density, and you increase your cardiorespiratory capacity. So that's not an exhaustive list. There's a number of other suites that are developed with training. And so the basis of taper begins in, a lot of times it's the summer, but it begins in the fall. It begins in the hard training. You have to train hard to be able to taper. So what happens is you begin to progressively train, and it's a stepwise thing. So you'll train, you'll add intensity, and then you'll go to the next level. Okay? So you're always challenging your body to adapt. So you're presenting stronger stimuli around holiday training. That's kind of the peak of your training cycle. And so what the body will do then is present stronger adaptations to kind of push against or push out against the stimuli you're presenting it. Okay? So as you begin a progressive deload of training stimuli or intensity on this side of the cycle, the art of taper is fooling the body into maintaining those training adaptations with a reduced workload. Okay? So ideally, a perfect taper would be you still have these strong, robust adaptations to training, but the stimuli you're presenting is much, much more reduced than the heavy training from the beginning of the season. Okay? So what's really complicated about this whole thing is that everybody's different. So number one, everybody falls on a spectrum of sprint versus endurance type athletes. Now the elite endurance are pretty much 100% on this side of the spectrum, and the elite sprint or power athletes are 100% on this side of the spectrum. So you might have a team of 30 people at completely different spots on the spectrum. On top of that, in terms of just individual difference, they all come from different training backgrounds. So you have to not only consider that when you're training and increasing the workload to holiday training, because you might have somebody that comes in and they are doing 2,000 a practice, they haven't done mornings, so you have to facilitate that and then deload that training in a different way than you would somebody that has swam since they're 4 years old. Okay? And so basically that's the physiology of it. You increase the stimuli as you go through the season and then basically fool the body in the deload phase. Okay? So a lot of what people, I think a misconception is that you just reduce volume. I think reducing volume doesn't allow the body to keep those stimuli it needs in that rest phase. So for example, if you want to maintain these aerobic adaptations, you have to hit the body with that aerobic stimuli. And so it's going to invest energy in maintaining the capillary density and all those aerobic adaptations that you developed in this intense phase. Okay? The tricky part with that is everybody's going to come in at a certain baseline performance. As you train, you're going to get fatigued. So as you go through this progressive overload phase, you're going to start to fatigue. And then once you hit Christmas training, ideally, all the work should be done. Then it's just a refining and polishing skills. And then kind of as you begin to taper, you cross that baseline performance and you go into what's called a supercompensation, and you have about 2 weeks to perform in that supercompensation phase. The scary part is, and this is where that individual difference comes into play and pairs with the physiology, is there's a certain line where the level of fatigue is too much to come back from. Okay, so no matter what rest you give that person, their central nervous system and the physiology that you've just taxed it so much that it's hard to come back. And so the art of coaching and the art of taper is knowing when that athlete is tap dancing on the line, as they say, and then to be able to either give them an adaptation week during a training cycle or pull them off of the training. So that's a huge art of the physiology of taper. And so it's all about balancing the training with the adaptation and making sure that you're not overwhelming the system so that you can pull the rest or pull the adaptations that you train so hard for in the training side of the phase into the taper. The most important part of taper, though, is the psychology. And so if you notice, you start out with a smaller smile, heavy training, you have a small smile, but taper, everybody loves taper, but everybody freaks out during taper. Because you spend 20 weeks training so hard, and then you stop training and your body says, wait a second, what am I doing now? And so your mind kind of is so used to that workload that it doesn't know what to think, and so you start kind of second guessing yourself. And that kind of brings us over to the psychology side of it, which is, in terms of performance, the best performances come with a quiet mind. Okay, so what this is this is an EEG reading, and so EEG is electroencephalography, and they put these caps on pistol shooters in a study. This was in biological psychology a couple years ago. They put the caps on these pistol shooters, and what they found was that the shooters that kept their mind more quiet, and we'll talk about that in a second of how they do that, generally had greater accuracy when they fired, versus those that had a more noisy brain. It correlated to poorer performance in the shooting task. So some of the ways we do this at Auburn to increase the kids smiling and to basically just quiet the brain, just relax, the taper, the training's there, just coming off the workload and believing in yourself and making sure that you can perform the way you know you can, or the way your coaches know you can. And so Sergio's been running meditation sessions or mindfulness sessions. So we do a lot of just kind of listening to enchanted forests and just relaxing and envisioning yourself in a positive light. Another thing that we studied in my lab is mindfulness, just being mindful and in the moment. So we do both of those here at Auburn, and it seems to work out really well. Another thing is it's an easy time for coaches to get anxious, because you lose that workload, you lose that control of the intensity of the workout. So you kind of have to step back and just relax, because your team will sense you being relaxed. So we basically just try to crack jokes, make them laugh, smile. And so that just kind of takes them out of their head and allows them to just do what they've trained to do. And so what happens when you have this noisy brain is in moments of pressure. So when you go to the SECs or Virginia Tech or wherever your championship meet is, you try too hard. Instead of allowing yourself to perform, your mind is basically telling your muscles to invest more than they need to, as opposed to what you have trained to do and work so hard with that 20-week training cycle to do. And so what it comes down to is just psychological stress reduction during a 3-week or 4-week taper period. And just getting the athletes to believe in themselves and believe in their teammates. That's a large part of what we've got going on here, is just swim for your team. It takes the pressure off of you, it quiets your mind. And there's a myriad of different tactics that you can go about to really try to quiet your mind. But there's a bunch of research to suggest that a quiet mind enables superior performance. And so I think broken swims and a lot of things like that in terms of just the swim side of how to quiet the mind gives them the confidence, but ultimately it's your job as the coach to help them be confident and help them understand that no matter what, however they swim, they're going to be okay, and it's going to be a great experience. So that's just a little bit of what I feel about taper, and I hope that you've learned something today. I would love to go into a lot of the X's and O's, intricacies of it all, but feel free to send us your questions, and hopefully we can make this a bi-weekly or monthly or yearly thing if you're interested. So thanks for coming. I appreciate it.